Hi, thank you so much for coming to my presentation. It's on teacher attrition, and it's a growing concern for the future of special education students. Before we begin, I just want to define two things. First, attrition. That's the event when a teacher leaves their career earlier than planned for reasons other than retirement. And retention is the event when a teacher chooses to stay in their career. The purpose of my paper was to first explore the reasons for attrition in special education teachers. Second was to discuss the evidence that was found to back up these reasons. And third was to reveal ways that these studies found to retain such teachers and prevent attrition. My audience were administrations, school districts, and anyone else with the power to affect policies and procedures when it comes to supporting special education teachers. I wanted to go over 4 important statistics that I covered in my paper. The first one is by a group that did a study, and it was just this year, and they determined that over 45% of United States schools are reporting vacancies in special education teaching positions. And another study that was done by UNESCO, which is a United Nations international group of leaders that make goals in science, education, and arts for students, for children. They determined that they would need 69 million new teachers by 2030 in order to fill all the vacancies that keep happening. And in Madigan and Kim, that study discussed different things, and one of the things it discussed was that it noted that over 50% of new teachers leave within 5 years from the profession. When I talk about teachers, I'm referring to special education teachers in any of my statistics and anything else I say moving forward in this discussion. Finally, in Scott et al. In 2022, that study discussed that for every 2 out of 3 teachers that exit the profession, they all have to do with something other than retirement. Which leads me to these quotes. Over half of these schools reported the increased need to use school staff outside of their intended duties because of these vacancies. And then also many local agencies fill the special education teacher vacancies with teachers who are not fully licensed or highly qualified, or even at times with long-term substitutes. Now this affects the student's ability to receive a free and appropriate education by a highly qualified trained teacher. And that is a growing concern, which is why I wanted to talk about what's causing attrition. As you can see, this is a really long list and it's not exhaustive, but these are the different reasons that the various studies that I covered in my report actually discussed. They actually interviewed thousands of teachers to get this information. A couple of different things I wanted to touch on were things like paraeducator shortages, burnout, the ever-increasing legal requirements that they have to fulfill. I mean, obviously in this class, we've learned about a lot of the different laws that govern special education, and they continue to increase. Another thing that they talked about was losing the motivation to work with these students because of behavior and engagement issues. And I happened to notice that myself and experience it after just a couple of days working with some middle school students during field. And I came home really discouraged and not wanting to return. It was rather fascinating to me to feel that in just a matter of days. So I can only imagine what it feels like to go through that as a regular special education teacher day in, day out. But of course, my report was not all doom and gloom, and it's really important that I discovered the other side of the coin, which is how do we retain special education teachers? How do we keep them from leaving their career? And obviously this is a long list and I'm not going to go over all of them. You can take a look at some of these while I discuss it. But a couple of things that stood out to me were things that leadership could do to make sure these teachers had the support and had the benefits that they needed in order to do their job and to stay in their job. Things like giving teachers ownership over their instruction and curriculum, making sure they're part of all the big decisions that a school makes and even the school district makes. Being able to have good mentors and a good community of peers. One of the things that the studies discussed was the fact that a lot of special education teachers feel isolated due to many teachers not knowing how to communicate with them or relate to them, and that affects their desire to stay. So as you can see, there's a lot of different things that not only can leadership do, but also just anyone who works with special education teachers, but most importantly, administrators, school districts, and anyone else that has the ability to make policies for these teachers. I wanted to close my my presentation by using this quote, and it said, "Unless leaders become proactive, they will continue to face the same problems every year. Districts can and must create an atmosphere in which special education teachers are well respected in their educational communities, provided good working conditions, including competitive pay, and supported as professionals. They must implement policies and procedures to change the culture of individual schools and education in general." Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I hope that you learned something and hope you have a good evening.